Hello there. This is the news on NTAi International. I'm Nancy Godi Anwunihu, and on sign language is Precious Ozemene. First, the headlines. First Lady Oluremi Tinubu advocates a strengthening of maternal health services as world marks International Day to end obstetric fistula. Information Minister charges journalists to uphold tenets of profession. Government of Ghana introduces new visa policy to reduce application processing time. The news in full. The International Day to End Obstetric Fistula reminds all of us of the silent suffering endured by countless women and girls in Nigeria and around the world over a condition that is both preventable and treatable. Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu stated this in her message marking 2025 International Day to End Obstetric Fistula. She says this year's theme, Breaking the Cycle, Preventing Fistula Worldwide, highlights the urgent need to take bold and comprehensive steps towards eliminating this serious condition, while noting that many women in Nigeria continue to suffer from obstetric fistula in silence, often isolated and stigmatized simply for trying to bring a life into this world. The First Lady emphasizes the need to discourage such practice and support affected women. She also calls for prevention, which must involve strengthening maternal health services, ending child marriage, and empowering women and girls through education and ensuring skilled care before, during, and after childbirth. Now, after 3 years of negotiations, the legally binding pact on pandemic was adopted by the World Health Assembly in Geneva. WHO member countries welcomed its passing with applause. The accord aims to prevent a repeat of the disjointed response and international disarray that surrounded the COVID-19 pandemic by improving coordination, surveillance, and access to medicines during any future pandemics. WHO Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus describes it as a historic one, saying the world is safer now.
Every government is responsible for and accountable to its own people. But member states can only truly keep their own people safe if they're accountable to each other at the global level.
Experts say the agreement is a victory for public health, science, and multilateral actions, as it will ensure that nations can collectively protect the world from future pandemic threats. The pandemic treaty is also aimed at addressing the continent's vulnerability to infectious disease outbreaks. And now to talk more on the pandemic treaty adopted by the World Health Assembly and its significant implications for Africa is the Executive Director of Resilience African Action Network Africa and the Global Policy Lead for African Pandemic Action Network, Agre Aluso, who is joining us via Zoom from Kenya. You're welcome, Agre.
Thank you.
Now, let's start with the words of Tedros Ghebreyesus, which indicate that the world is now safer. Is the world really safe with pandemic treaty?
Thank you very much, Nancy. I think Dr. Tedros could not be happier after 3 years of hard work trying to get this agreement, signed off. And I think what he means is that we have started a journey towards making the world safer. I don't think we are fully safer yet, but it's a very good first step towards making the world safer. The agreement provides a framework for cooperation, global cooperation in dealing with pandemics, not just response, but prevention, preparedness, and response. And I think if you look at the finer details in the agreement, in as much as it's a compromise document, which means a lot of things that many interested parties wanted, particularly from Africa and other low and middle income countries, did not get them in terms of fully getting what they wanted. But I think it is a good step in the right direction, providing a framework for collaboration in terms of sharing technology, in terms of sharing knowledge, in terms of boosting our capabilities, providing framework that could help us boost our capacities to detect early and respond to threats of outbreak before they become deadly outbreaks. But I think a lot of work remains to be done in terms of implementing this going forward.
Now let's look at Africa. What are the significant implications of this treaty on the continent?
Thank you. Africa faced a lot of challenges during the past pandemics, and it's not just COVID. We've had Ebola before. We've had recently Mpox. We've had Marburg virus disease in Rwanda and Tanzania. There've been so many outbreaks in Africa, and Africa is in the front line of a lot of disease outbreaks, significant increases. And unfortunately, Africa does not have the level of preparedness that many other parts of the world have, particularly the global north countries. And this treaty, therefore, puts Africa in a good state in terms of creating a framework to collaborate globally, but also to collaborate regionally, and provide a framework for national preparedness, giving policy propositions that therefore, if we put in motion those propositions that have been stipulated in the agreement, Africa would be in the right direction to be prepared to prevent, respond, and contain outbreaks that are becoming more frequent than ever. And I think one of the most outstanding achievements from this agreement is, for example, I think One Health, which really directs action toward looking at the animal, environment, and human health sectors, more connected way than before, because we've seen a lot of outbreaks that we're dealing with are coming from the zoonotic sources, that means from animals, and we've not been planning our health response, so public health, with good, recognition of this interconnectedness. So this agreement really puts us in with that level of awareness and direct action that will help us now look at where these outbreaks are coming from in terms of the opportunities for spillovers. I think another great possible achievement, which is yet to be fully realized, is the pathogen access and benefit sharing, which means Africa has been having a lot of pathogens from its soil, from different parts of Africa, which are used to make countermeasures, vaccines, therapeutics and diagnostics. But we don't benefit from those pathogens. So one of the provisions that is in this agreement is that there's going to be an arrangement where if you get pathogens from a region like Africa, and a lot of pathogens come from Africa, then there should be an arrangement in which the countries that produce or that are source of those pathogens are going to benefit. That is in Article 12, pathogen access and benefit sharing, and that's going to be a very important provision. It's not fully realized. It's going to be negotiated as a protocol to the agreement, and it's one of the most significant pieces that Africa is really looking forward to benefit from, because it will help us now have access to the countermeasures that will help us respond to the challenges that we face.
Now, Agre, let me ask you, is it going to be all rosy? Are there anticipated challenges looking at the limited enforcement mechanisms, or don't you see?
Yeah, I think it will require a lot of political will domestically, and if we don't mash out that political will, we risk having the status quo remaining, and the status quo is one that does not help us in terms of being prepared for threats of diseases. So it's not going to be rosy. I think it's hard work ahead. All of us in our wholeness of society, the media, the research organizations like where I'm coming from, the scientists, we really have to rally together and impress upon our governments that this is just a statement of intention. The work now lies ahead, and we need to really mobilize resources locally, and Africa really needs to lead by putting resources where its mouth is, in terms of really putting human resource, financial resources, and infrastructure resources to really operationalize these intentions as have been stipulated in the agreement. A lot of stipulations are directional. It's advising countries to do what they need to do, and it's not providing resources from external sources to do that. So we will have to mobilize resources locally, and that means we have to make tough choices about having to sacrifice certain interventions or certain priorities so that we can make our continent prepared.
On this front, actually, want to ask you how. Yeah, would you advise African leaders to leverage the opportunities the treaty brings, like focusing on domestic financing, localization, and local manufacturing?
Absolutely. I think we really have to leverage this opportunity, the goodwill that now the agreement presents to us. It really is urging for global cooperation on so many fronts, including technology. Technology and skills sharing, intellectual property transfers on mutually agreed terms. Countries can negotiate and agree on how to share intellectual properties that help us boost our capability to manufacture countermeasures locally. And it also provides for opportunities to, it stipulates provisions to help boost collaboration towards enhancing our research and development, which are all essential for enhancing our local production. And Africa at the moment really lags behind in terms of capability to produce essential countermeasures, vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics. Locally, we really rely on external sources, and we saw how that ends up when we have a global crisis. Each country looks inwards and wants to take care of their populations. And therefore, the only way for Africa to be fully prepared is to have that capability to manufacture its own countermeasures. And these are an opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is wishing Africa well in this bid. Thank you, Aggrey Aluso.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Aggrey Aluso, for your thoughts.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.
Congolese senators have voted to lift the immunity of former President Joseph Kabila. This will allow military prosecutors to pursue legal action against him. Kolo Mohammed tells us more.
88 senators voted in favor, with 5 opposing and 3 abstaining. This follows a request from the Justice Minister last month asking the military courts to investigate Kabila's alleged direct involvement with the M23 rebel movement amid rising violence in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The military prosecutor accused Kabila of treason, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and supporting an insurrection. The decision sparked mixed reactions. Senators from the ruling party stressed that lifting immunity does not mean guilt. Senator Jules Lodi reminded that Kabila enjoys the presumption of innocence, but said no one is above the law. Senator Tshisekedi called the vote historic, describing the accusations as serious threats to the nation. Joseph Kabila responded quickly on social media, posting on X. He called the Senate's decision a desperate political act, criticizing it for being rushed and lacking respect for institutional balance. Kolo Mohammed, NTAi News.
Amnesty International Ghana has renewed its call for a constitutional amendment to completely abolish the death penalty and commute all existing death sentences to life imprisonment. This follows the sentencing of 6 individuals to death for high treason in 2024, despite the legislative abolition of the death penalty in 2023. The call was made during the launch of Amnesty International's annual Human Rights Report and its Death Sentences and Executions Report for 2024.
In terms of what amendments we would like to see. We also want to appeal to the government to, ensure that the Parliament of Ghana swiftly passes the Witchcraft Accusations Bill. This is a very important bill for Amnesty because we recently launched a report on witchcraft accusations where we highlight the human rights violations happening within the camps.
In Ghana, Amnesty International recorded 6 new death sentences in 2024, all for high treason under Article 3 of Ghana's 1992 Constitution. By the end of the year, 182 people remained under sentence of death. This is an increase from 180 the previous year. The Armed Forces Bill, which would have abolished the death penalty from the military code, remained unsigned when the period for presidential assent expired. This creates a troubling inconsistency in our legal framework, where civilian crimes no longer warrant death, while military offenses and high treason still do.
This is the news on NTAi International. Let's take a break. The government of Ghana has introduced a new visa policy aimed at significantly reducing application processing time. Under the new directive, visas will be now processed within 5 working days, a major improvement from the previous 4 to 6 week wait. Details with Kolo Mohammed.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration announced that the policy takes immediate effect. This reinforces Ghana's commitment to becoming a premier hub for tourism, business and investment in Africa. Systems for the new visa policy have already been deployed across Ghana's diplomatic missions to facilitate the smooth implementation of the process. The initiative aligns with President John Mahama's pledge during his January 7, 2025 inauguration that Ghana is open to business. The foreign minister emphasized that the new policy eliminates bureaucratic hurdles that have long discouraged investors and travelers. Despite the streamlined processing time, the ministry clarified that the new policy does not guarantee automatic visa approval. Each application will be assessed within 5 working days, determining eligibility on a case-by-case basis. The move is expected to attract foreign direct investment, boost tourism, and strengthen engagement with Ghanaians in diaspora. The Foreign Affairs Minister said, with an invitation to experience Ghana's vibrancy firsthand, Ghana is truly open for business. Come enjoy the Black Star experience, he said. In other news, Iranian delegation arrived at the Omani embassy in Rome, venue of the 5th round of talks with the United States over Iran's nuclear program. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says that deep divisions remain within the two sides on the eve of the new round of talks with the United States on the Iranian nuclear program. He said there are still fundamental differences between the U.S. and Iran, warning Iran may not have an agreement at all if the United States want to prevent Iran from enriching uranium. Reports say U.S. President Donald Trump spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier about a possible deal with Iran and the shooting of 2 Israeli embassy staff in Washington. Kolo Mohammed, NTAi News.
A coalition of climate change activists is intensifying calls to end climate injustices faced by Africa. While they advocate a significant shift towards renewable energy solutions, they emphasized leveraging Africa's abundant natural resources to power this transition. Charles Alpha reports.
Repower Africa, renewable solutions over fossil fuels, collective voices, sustainable voices, and more were inscriptions displayed to drive home the message, while promoting the African cultural heritage also featured prominently.
What do we want? Repower Africa!
The campaign underscores the dual benefits of embracing renewables, mitigating the impact of climate change, and fostering energy independence and economic growth across Africa.
We are fighting for public funding for renewable energy and not just handout to polluters. We are fighting for reparations for centuries of extraction and underdevelopment.
These activists are urging African governments and international partners to prioritize investment in solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal energy projects, which are abundant in Nigeria and across the continent. by engaging young minds. Michael David Terunga of the Global Initiative for Food and Security hopes to cultivate a deeper understanding of climate issues and inspire proactive participation in finding and implementing solutions for a resilient and sustainable Africa.
We cannot continue to depend on fossil fuels because it is skewed against people of Africa. And that's why on this day we are calling for Repower Africa.
The group called for grants and not loans for Africa to effectively deal with the climate change problems it's facing. Charles Alpha, NTAi News.
Now, as journalists, do your job professionally and uphold the core moral tenets of the profession by being at the forefront of building a strong democracy. These were the words of the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, while playing host to the National Executive of the Nigerian Union of Journalists. Salihu Abdullahi Gwanara reports.
The new wind blowing the nation's media ecosystem under the leadership of a veteran journalist who is also on active duty as the nation's #1 reporter is endearing different professional associations. One of the frontline professional groups, the Nigerian Union of Journalists, is here to show solidarity to the ongoing reforms.
My passion and love for being in this position is to see how I can be an advocate for a better Nigeria through sensitizing and educating journalists on the importance of prioritizing issues of national security and national interest.
June 21st has been fixed for the celebration of our 70th anniversary. We clocked 70 in March this year.
The #1 spokesman reaffirmed that under President Tinubu's leadership, there is no alternative to press freedom and reminded members of the pen profession about the dangers of fake news due to the proliferation of unqualified media practitioners.
This profession is a highly respected one, and it is up to you to uphold it as such. You are media professionals. You are not beggars, you are professionals. Please hold yourselves as professionals and not beggars. Don't beg anybody for anything. Do your job and let respect return to this profession. What you stand for is to the improvement of our country. And that is what also government is there for. So at least we have a point of convergence, and that point of convergence should be our guiding light in everything that we do together to make Nigeria better.
He challenged members of the media to complement government's efforts towards the establishment of UNESCO Category 2 Media and Literacy Institute by also condemning and reporting conveyors of misinformation. In Abuja, Salihu Abdullahi Gwanara, NTAi.
In a bold move to diversify Nigerian economy and create jobs, the federal government has reiterated its commitment in constructing good roads that will open economic corridors to the nation. Minister of State for Works Bello Muhammad Garanyo stated this at the 16th meeting of the National Council on Industry, Trade and Investment in Lagos. Usman Zubairu reports.
Nigeria has found itself in a situation where there is an urgent need to diversify the country's economy from over-relying on a single economic resource. The renewal agenda on road infrastructure is one of the drivers by the President Tinubu's administration to open economic prosperity across the country. Minister of State for Works Bello Muhammad Garanyo at the 16th meeting of the National Council on Industry, Trade and Investment in Lagos State said the Federal Ministry of Works has since embarked on revamping all critical federal routes to open for increased economic activities as well as free movement of goods and services.
We recognize that good roads are not just conduits of movement. They are arteries of economic growth, pathways to prosperities, and bridges to connect communities and opportunities.
While acknowledging the commitment and the resilience of the Federal Minister of Industry and Trade and Investment for holding the meeting, Bello Garanyo said there is an urgent need to diversify Nigeria's economic policy agenda for sustenance and future relevance in the global economy.
Let me add that the road infrastructure is a great driver to the GDP of any nation. Therefore, I must commend Mr. President very highly for giving road infrastructure its rightful place so that our economy can grow.
The theme for this year's meeting is accelerating diversification to rebuild prosperity by leveraging in industry, trade and investment for shared prosperity. Usman Zubairu, NTAi News.
Minister of Steel Development Shuaibu Abubakar Audu has emphasized federal government's resolve to resuscitate all legacy steel assets in Nigeria for industrial development, irrespective of ownership structure. This was during an inspection tour of the moribund erstwhile Delta Steel plant in Abuja, Delta State. Ekenendu Lue reports.
Established by the federal government in 1979 and commissioned in 1982, Delta Steel Plant was designed to produce 1 million metric tons of liquid steel annually. In 2015, Premium Steel and Mines Limited took over assets of the company from Assets Management Company of Nigeria. The minister's tour of the facility reveals that since 2021, the company has remained moribund due to unavailability of raw materials, among other reasons. This meeting between the minister and the company's management is to find ways of restoring the plant's operations to full capacity.
I have the mandate of Mr. President to intervene and resolve all issues holding these assets down and to ensure that the noble vision of our founding fathers are realized in these projects. The operation of the plant at full capacity will generate 5,000 direct jobs and 10,000 indirect jobs in the Nigerian economy.
The inspection tour has been an eye-opener for the Minister of Steel Development, and a major commitment has been made here that government will ensure that this facility regains its rightful place as a major contributor to Nigeria's industrial landscape. From Abuja, Delta State, Ekene Ndulue, NTAi News.
Ekene's report brings to an end this bulletin. On behalf of Precious Ozemene, who's been on sign language, this is Nancy Godiangonihu thanking you for watching.